Chapter 525. Ian did not reply Gu Meng Meng. He just exchanged glances with Leah and Elvis, before flapping his wings and flying away against the wind. Elvis released his beast pressure to prevent the snake beasts from getting close, while Leah used his advantage to search for every possible entrance. Ian was protecting Gu Meng Meng in the air, while using God's view to provide information to Leah and Elvis. The three males cooperated well. It should have been a good start. But Gu Meng Meng's body shook. Then she felt herself falling into a state of weightlessness. Looking up, she saw Ian's face turning green. His body could not move at all, as if his acupoints had been sealed. His pupils were starting to lose focus, and he used his last bit of rationality to retract his wings, using his body to protect Gu Meng Meng. Gu Meng Meng did not even have the time to scream before she lost consciousness. Cold. Something lightly brushed past Gu Meng Meng's cheek. Frowning, Gu Meng Meng forced her dry eyes open. He wanted to sit up, but he found that he couldn't control his body. Not to mention sitting, he couldn't even lift a finger. The only things she could control were her eyelids and eyeballs. Awake! A cold and emotionless voice rang above Gu Meng Meng's head. Gu Meng Meng looked up with a posture that seemed like she was rolling her eyes. She could only see a naked upper body. Judging from the flatness of the chest, it should be a male. But this face was bewitching. She was definitely a cold and aloof elder sister. Leah was also very handsome, like a demon or a deity, but it would not cause people to doubt his gender. But this guy in front of her was like a demon or Rakshasa that crawled out from the 18th level of hell. His demonic aura was so strong that it was mesmerizing. He was just looking at Gu Meng Meng without any expression. But Gu Meng Meng felt as if she had fallen into a cave and was watching Chun Sanyang perform a striptease. Her heart could not help but beat wildly, and Gu Meng Meng even forgot how to breathe. Nice to look at. The evildoer was neither angry nor happy. He asked in an indifferent and calm tone. Gu Meng Meng was stunned for a moment, before realizing that it was impolite to stare at someone like that. So she quickly retracted her gaze and tried to cough. Realizing that she could still speak, she looked down at the tip of her nose and asked, "May I know you are?" That demon raised his eyebrows and slid his body to the bottom of Gu Meng Meng's face. His cold fingers lifted Gu Meng Meng's chin lightly, and with an unhappy expression he said, "Why aren't you looking at me anymore?" Gu Meng Meng did not hear clearly what the demon said. She just realized that she was lying in the tail of a giant snake. Her mind went blank, and without thinking, she roared out loud out of reflex. "Ah!" That demon frowned and pushed Gu Meng Meng's chin with his fingers, forcefully interrupting Gu Meng Meng's shocking biological reaction. He pinched Gu Meng Meng's cheeks and asked, "Are you afraid of me?" Gu Meng Meng's and Meng Meng's expression and said, Gu's s Meng Meng's expression, Gu's s and King and Meng s Meng. Chapter 526. Answer my question or I will eat you up. The demon moved closer to Gu Meng Meng and opened his mouth, revealing two poisonous fangs. Gu Meng Meng was even more afraid. Damn! A human's mouth could not open so wide. Great king, please spare my life. Gu Meng Meng stuttered. The demon shut his mouth and looked at Gu Meng Meng with interest. His cold fingers brushed past her face, and he muttered to himself, "Not as pretty as her, but still interesting." Gu Meng Meng completely did not understand what the demon was saying, and just looked at him with a guarded and frightened expression. The demon asked, "You are Gu Meng Meng?" Gu Meng Meng wanted to nod, but realized that her neck could not move. Not daring to test the demon's patience, she just replied with a yeah while trembling. The demon said, "Help me think of a nickname, one that is different from everyone else." Gu Meng Meng blinked her eyes at the demon and said, Great king, please spare my life." The demon's face turned cold and he said, "You want me to call you Great King? Please spare my life?" Gu Meng Meng, "Ha!" The demon released his hand, and his pupils turned vertical in front of Gu Meng Meng. He said, "I will only count to 3. If you can't think of anything, I will eat you up." Gu Meng Meng was dumbfounded, and completely did not know what was going on. Although females were extremely precious in the beast world, she did not doubt that this fellow would really swallow her up after counting to 3. Hence, Gu Mingming's brain activated a magical mode. Her brain worked rapidly in a muddled state, and following the demon's countdown, she activated her strongest brain mode. Demon 1. Gu Mingming. Demon 3. Gu Mingming. Tu Ming. The demon nodded and repeated, Tu Ming. Gu Mingming almost bit off her tongue. She originally wanted to ask, where's Tu? But in the end, she called out Tu Ming instead. But seeing that the demon seemed to be satisfied with this form of address, Gu Mingming secretly heaved a sigh of relief. She felt as if she had escaped from a great disaster by accident. Demon Tu Ming. Gu Mingming answered bitterly. The demon smiled faintly, as if he felt that it was quite fun. Then he called out again, Tu Ming. Gu Mingming. This game repeated for at least 2 hours, and Gu Mingming had the misconception that she was a pet dog being trained to remember her name. 2 hours later, the evildoer seemed to have finally answered the question. Do you dare to answer when I call you? Hence, he moved his body and used his tail to drag Gu Mingming out. Only then did Gu Mingming slowly recover from her fear, and started to size up her surroundings. In the dark and damp cave, there was a faint sound of water dripping. There was no wind, and the air was humid and stuffy. If she had not inherited Elvis's night vision ability, she would have been completely blind here. There were many water droplet-shaped stalactites on the ceiling of the cave. They were round and glossy. The uncanny workmanship of nature formed a majestic and awe-inspiring scene. The sudden blinding light made Gu Mingming squint her eyes in discomfort. She wanted to raise her hand to block it, but unfortunately, she could not even move a finger. The demon swam for a long time before stopping by a lake. Looking at Gu Mingming, he was a little impatient, but still picked up a tree branch to start a fire. Chapter 527. After the fire rose, the demon frowned and took 2 steps back in disdain. He then looked at Gu Mingming and said, I hate fire, you roast it yourself. Gu Mingming was on the verge of tears. Mighty King, I can't move. The demon looked at Gu Mingming with the word trash written clearly in its eyes, but it still aimed the tip of its snake tail at Gu Mingming's mouth. Gu Mingming instinctively clenched her teeth and shut her mouth, but the demon suddenly moved its face closer and opened its mouth wide, frightening Gu Mingming so much that she screamed loudly. At that moment, the snake tail directly entered Gu Mingming's mouth. Gu Mingming felt something pricking her tongue. Then, there was a warm feeling spreading throughout her body, as if her frozen blood was starting to flow again. She gradually regained control of her body, from being able to curl her fingers to barely being able to sit up straight. Gu Mingming gradually started to feel a sense of security. If I find out that you're trying to escape, I'll eat your partner first, then your pet, and then I'll catch you. The demon's voice was flat without any fluctuation, but Gu Mingming was so scared that she broke out in cold sweat. Twisting her neck stiffly, she forced herself to face this scary demon. She plucked up her courage and asked, How are the 3 males that were with me? The demon's eyes turned cold. He clearly did not like Gu Mingming mentioning other people in front of him, and had completely forgotten that he was the one who mentioned it first. Gu Mingming continued cautiously, We don't have any ill intentions. They are just accompanying me to find my son. The evildoer said coldly, I know. Gu Mingming tilted her head. You know? The evildoer snorted coldly and said, Yes. Gu Mingming was clearly so scared that she wanted to escape, but she still gritted her teeth and moved closer to the demon, asking, How are they now? The demon was displeased and said, If you ask again, I'll eat them all. Gu Mingming waved her hands and said, I won't ask anymore, I won't ask anymore. Please don't be angry, Your Majesty. The demon used his chin to point at the pile of animal carcasses at the side and said, Roast them. Eat them. Gu Mingming nodded, not daring to retort. Her husband and son were obviously in the hands of others. How could she dare to disobey? But when she turned around, Gu Mingming was dumbfounded. She was just a weak woman without the strength to even truss a chicken. Roasting a rhinoceros with her bare hands was something she couldn't do. The demon was behind Gu Mingming, and seeing that she was not moving, he urged, Roast it quickly. Gu Mingming turned around and said softly, I can't. The evildoer made a tisk sound. Then, with a face full of reluctance, it used its tail to roll up a huge beast, and used a thick branch to roast it over the fire. Gu Mingming watched as the fur curled up and turned black, giving off a pungent and unpleasant smell. Her stomach churned, but she did not dare to vomit. She could only pray continuously in her heart. Damn, this thing that was scarier than Elvis's cooking. Please don't let me eat it. However, the beast deity clearly bore a grudge against Gu Mingming for pretending to be his daughter. The demon placed something 10 times bigger in front of Gu Mingming and said, "Eat." Gu Mingming asked in a trembling voice, "Can I not eat it?" The demon frowned and asked coldly, "You dislike me?" Chapter 528. After 2 mouthfuls of roasted meat, Gu Mingming fainted once again. The moment her vision turned black, she actually smiled, so damn blissful. This was simply a release. "Tuming? Tuming?" The demon's unhappy voice rang beside Gu Mingming's ears. But she was secretly happy, like a question, "I'm going to faint. Let's see what else you can do to me." Ha 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 ha. Time seemed to have stopped. Gu Mingming did not know how long she had fainted, but when she woke up from the urge to pee, the sky was already filled with stars. "Awake!" A cold voice rang above her head. This familiar feeling sent a chill down Gu Mingming's back, but she did not have the courage to turn back. If she were to see that gigantic snake that was as thick as a towering ancient tree, Gu Mingming had no doubt that she would pee on the spot. Say, sir, I want to go to the toilet. Can I?" The demon responded with a cold yeah, then added, "Finish it within 10 steps. If you go too far, I'll eat you up." Sigh. Gu Mingming put on a long face and tried her best to take the biggest stride. She successfully went behind a big tree on her 10th step and quickly finished her physiological needs before heaving a sigh of relief and standing up slowly. Lying on the tree trunk, Gu Mingming peeked her little head out secretly. Without a terrifyingly thick snake tail, there was only a handsome young man standing under the moonlight. His gaze was filled with evilness as he raised his slender finger and pointed at Gu Mingming. Then he flipped his palm upwards and hooked his finger. Gu Mingming shrunk her neck and walked out from behind the tree timidly. She took a closer look and confirmed that this fellow was indeed that demon. But after transforming into a human, he did not look as scary as when he was in his half-orc state. His body was well-proportioned and slender, unlike Elvis's strong and muscular body, nor Lee's well-proportioned body. It was a type of muscle line that was in between Elvis and Leah. All the muscle fibers grew vertically, making his entire person look even more chiseled and beautiful. Strength and femininity were perfectly combined on his body, and the whiteness of his skin had reached a stage that made one's hair stand on end. Gu Mingming had the urge to poke him, because she felt that his skin was so good that a little force could poke a hole. The demon looked at Gu Mingming coldly and accepted her stare calmly. After a long while he finally spoke. "You're not afraid of me anymore?" Gu Mingming was taken aback. She immediately lowered her head and maintained the posture of a little eunuch, saying, I'm scared, Your Majesty. You are wise and mighty. You have unified the world." The evildoer snorted coldly and stretched out his hand, palm facing upwards. Gu Mingming looked at the demon's hand in confusion, then raised her head to look at his eyes. The word dumbfounded was clearly written all over her face. The demon said impatiently, "Hand." Gu Mingming responded with an "oh." Then, like a dog being taught how to shake hands by its owner, she clenched her fists and placed them on the demon's palm. She was just short of sticking out her tongue and barking, "Woof woof woof." The demon's hand was long and huge. With his fingers slightly bent, he completely wrapped Gu Mingming's little hand in his own. The corners of his lips curled up slightly, as though he found it miraculous. Then he murmured softly, "So it really is hot. What?" Gu Mingming tilted her head and asked. The demon did not reply, and just pulled Gu Mingming deeper into the forest. Chapter 529. The demon brought Gu Mingming to the side of a deep pool, then used his chin to point at the hundreds of beasts in the pool, asking, "Which one do you like?" Gu Mingming stretched her neck to look down. "Did I go to the wild zoo?" This was simply a small-scale food chain, a microscopic animal world. Gu Mingming looked at the demon in surprise, asking, "Are you playing happy farming?" The demon looked at the deep pool, then back at Gu Mingming, saying, "Don't you all store food like this?" Gu Mingming was stunned for a moment, then asked back, "You know how to breed and breed?" The demon frowned impatiently, saying, "Choose quickly, which one do you want to eat?" Although Gu Mingming had not eaten for a day, but thinking about this man's dark cooking skills that were even higher than Elvis's, she shook her head firmly for the sake of her own life, saying, "My stomach is not feeling well today. I don't want to eat meat. I'll just eat some fruits." The demon twitched his mouth, saying, "Troublesome." As he said that, he still held Gu Mingming's hand, turning around to walk back. When they accidentally passed by a certain tree, they looked up. The demon said coldly, "Hindrance." Then, he kicked it nonchalantly, and then, the tree fell. Gu Mingming stared dumbfoundedly at the huge tree that needed at least 5 to 6 people to hug was kicked over just like that. She immediately decided not to provoke this man even if she was beaten to death. The demon walked to the top of the tree nonchalantly, pointing at the fruits hanging on the branches, saying, "Eat." Gu Mingming then understood that this man was acting to find food for her. Gu Mingming smiled obsequiously, saying, "Thank you, mighty king." With that, she was prepared to sit on the tree branch obediently to pick a few fruits to eat. But before she could take a step, she was pulled back again. Turning around, she met the demon's unhappy eyes, faking a smile, saying, "Mighty king?" The demon tightened his grip, saying, "Don't run away, I'll eat you." Gu Mingming shook her head, saying, No, I don't dare to run away. I'm just going to eat a few fruits." The demon did not say a word. He held Gu Mingming's little hand and walked to a tree branch. He bent his legs and sat down, then looked sideways at Gu Mingming. Gu Mingming's hand was being held by the demon, and it was impossible for her to sit further away. Hence, just when she wanted to sit beside him, the demon pulled Gu Mingming into his arms. He was still expressionless as he said, "My body is more comfortable." Gu Mingming smiled bitterly. "Damn it, I'm feeling uncomfortable." The demon raised his eyebrows. "Do you have an opinion?" Gu Mingming smiled apologetically and put on a cowardly look. No, completely not at all." Only then did the demon nod his head in satisfaction. He casually plucked a bunch of fruits that looked like grapes, but were obviously not grapes, and passed it to Gu Mingming. "Eat." Gu Mingming took the fruit with one hand and wanted to wash it. But when she saw her hand being held by the demon, she gave up. Holding the root of the fruit in one hand, he raised his head and bit into it. The tip of his tongue tasted sweet, and the juice filled his entire mouth. Gu Mingming nodded instinctively. After swallowing, she exclaimed, "So sweet." The demon looked at Gu Mingming from the corner of his eyes. He did not even know how gentle his expression was at that moment. How long had it been since he was interested in food? All the swallowing was out of instinct. But at that moment, he was very curious about the taste of the fruit that made her smile. Chapter 530. The corners of Gu Mingming's mouth twitched. Looking at the 2 shiny poisonous fangs, Gu Mingming's heart crumbled. Looking at the fruits in her hands, not feeding. That was a problem. The demon seemed to be getting impatient from waiting. He frowned slightly and his eyes clearly said, "If you don't feed me, I will eat you." Gu Mingming immediately delivered the fruits to the demon's mouth. The demon imitated Gu Mingming and wanted to bite one into his mouth, but the moment his poisonous fangs touched the skin of the fruit broke immediately and juice splashed all over the demon's face. The demon frowned and wanted to get angry, but he saw Gu Mingming laugh out loud. His anger was mysteriously dispersed by her bright smile. The demon stuck out his tongue and gently licked the juice at the side of his lips. He frowned. What kind of disgusting taste was this? She actually liked this taste, so weird. But although weird, it did not seem so annoying. Gu Mingming held back her laughter and raised the remaining half of the fruits, asking, "Mighty king, do you still want to eat?" The demon turned his head away coldly and said, "You can eat it yourself." Gu Mingming did not know why. Maybe it was because the demon did not look that scary when he did not transform into a snake. Or maybe it was because the way he looked when the juice splashed all over his face was too comical. Or maybe it was because he did not do anything to hurt her even though he was awkward. Anyway, the guard in Gu Mingming's heart melted bit by bit. She felt that the demon was just not good at communicating with people. Although awkward and dangerous, he should not be too bad in nature. Or maybe, if she made him happy, he would return Elvis, Leah and her 3 sons to her? Thinking about this, a smile finally appeared on Gu Mingming's face. The demon kept looking at her from the corner of his eyes. Seeing her smile, the corners of his lips also rose unknowingly. Gu Mingming ate a lot of fruits, but there were still a lot left on that tree. She wanted to pluck some of the fruit back to eat tomorrow, so as not to waste it, but the evildoer refused to let go of her hand. When she showed the slightest sign of struggling, he threatened with a cold face. "If you dare to run, I'll eat you." Feeling helpless, Gu Mingming looked at the tree full of fruits with a pained expression. She was pulled back into the cave by the demon, who kept turning back every few steps. The demon found a flat spot to lie down, then pulled Gu Mingming into his arms. Gu Mingming did not dare to move. The demon frowned and said, "Do you want to sleep by yourself, or should I poison you till you faint?" Gu Mingming immediately shut her eyes tightly, wishing she could fall asleep. However, the more she wanted to sleep, the more she couldn't. In the end, she secretly opened one eye and whispered, "I've been unconscious for too long during the day. I can't sleep now." The demon frowned and said, "No sleep." Dejected, Gu Mingming stretched out her arm in front of the demon and said, "Then you can poison me till I faint, but please be gentle, I'm afraid of pain." The demon did not say a word, and just used his other hand to press down Gu Mingming's arm, then slowly placed his face on Gu Mingming's neck. Gu Mingming thought to herself, "What the heck? Vampire play?" Chapter 531. The prickling pain at the base of her tongue brought Gu Mingming back to her senses, and she frowned because of the discomfort in her body. Her eyelids were so dry that they hurt. Gu Mingming felt that if she opened her eyes now, her retina might be glued to her eyelids. A cool wetness slowly swept past Gu Mingming's eyes, relieving her discomfort at the right time. She tried to squint her eyes. There was no light, but it did not obstruct her vision. "Ooh," Gu Mingming moaned and rubbed her eyes. Looking at the side profile of the demon that was so close to her, her sleepiness disappeared instantly. She sat up straight as if she had stepped on an electric switch. You. The demon wiped the corners of his lips lightly and looked at Gu Mingming in disdain. "You're awake?" Gu Mingming touched her own eyes. They were wet. She felt a chill in her heart, thinking to herself, this lad looked so normal. But why did he have such a weird fetish? He liked to eat eye sockets? The demon held on to Gu Mingming's hand that was rubbing her eyes, then scrutinized Gu Mingming's face seriously. After a long while he said calmly, "Ugly." Ugh. It was as if a large knife had stabbed into Gu Mingming's heart. Yes, she was not as beautiful as Elvis, and the rest had described her to be. In the modern world, she would be average or even slightly below average. But there was no need to use the word ugly, right? Clenching her fists, Gu Mingming could only chuckle and say, "You're the king, whatever you say is right." The demon took down a bunch of fruits from the stone table at the side and passed it to Gu Mingming, saying, "Eat." Gu Mingming took a look and saw that it was the kind she had eaten last night. She stretched her head out to take a look and saw the same fruits piled up like a hill on the stone table behind the demon. Blinking her eyes, Gu Mingming asked, "You kicked the tree again?" The demon shook his head and said, "There's only one such fruit tree." Gu Mingming was petrified on the spot, as if she was struck by lightning. There should be a limit to squandering, right? Orphan version. What the hell, an entire species was kicked to extinction just like that. The demon looked at Gu Mingming's weird expression and frowned unhappily. Yesterday, seeing how much she treasured them, he ordered the snake to pick all the fruits on the tree after she fell asleep. He had thought that she would be happy when she woke up. But why did she look like she was about to cry and seemed a little angry? TSK even uglier. Gu Mingming carefully held the bunch of fruits in the demon's hands, plucked one and sent it into her mouth, tasting it carefully. No seeds? Hiss. Gu Mingming was a little confused. She plucked another one. It was still seedless? No wonder there was only one fruit tree. The probability of producing seeds was too low. The demon hooked Gu Mingming's chin, frowning with a cold expression. Smile. Ah. Gu Mingming was dumbfounded, not understanding the demon's words. The demon's face was cold as he ordered, smile. Gu Mingming grinned and forced herself to bare her teeth, smiling perfunctorily. The evildoer was impatient. He turned his head and said, so ugly. Gu Mingming raised her fist, and really wanted to slap the back of this demon's head, when he was not paying attention. But before her hand could touch his hair, the demon had already turned back to look at Gu Mingming coldly. Gu Mingming looked awkwardly at her hand, that was frozen in midair. Then, she faked a smile and waved, saying, Hi. The demon snorted and did not respond to Gu Mingming's greeting. He just looked at her coldly and asked, Don't you like to eat this kind of fruit? I gave you so many, why are you still unhappy? Aside from the topic. Although everyone hates me, but I still appeared, Chapter 532. Gu Mingming sighed and said, There's only one such fruit tree. If you kick it down, I will never be able to eat this fruit again, after eating all these in front of me. Is that worth being happy about? The demon looked at her coldly and laughed in disdain. My Snake King Valley doesn't have many other things, but there are a lot of fruit trees. According to your eating speed, I'm afraid you won't be able to finish all of them until you die. Gu Mingming smiled awkwardly and said, Then what if I don't like other fruits and only like this one? The demon raised his eyebrows and said, You dare? Gu Mingming really felt that she had never met someone so difficult to communicate with in her life. Seeing that he was so powerful, Gu Mingming could only say timidly, I don't dare. The demon's expression then softened, and he gave another bunch of fruits to Gu Mingming and said, Since you like it, eat them all. Gu Mingming shook her head and said, I can't finish all of these before they rot no matter what. Instead of letting them rot, why don't we leave some to eat and bury the rest? Maybe one of the fruits in this large batch will have seeds, and in that case, that fruit tree can grow again in a few years. The demon did not comment and just said coldly, Natural selection, survival of the fittest. If it goes extinct, it will only prove that it is an eliminated species. No matter how hard you work, how many can you save? Gu Mingming smacked her lips and said, If I can save one, then it's one. The demon did not say anything more, and just held his head lazily, lying on his side, and watching Gu Mingming eat seriously. When she really could not eat anymore, he then held Gu Mingming's hand, and activated the conjoined twins mode. Gu Mingming sighed in resignation and followed behind the demon, asking, Where are we going? The demon said, To bask in the sun. Gu Mingming felt like she was really being raised as a pet dog. He fed her at a fixed time, and even brought her out for a walk after eating. Gu Mingming sat on a flat rock, and accompanied the demon to bask in the sun. She lowered her head and stared at her own shadow in a daze. The demon held her little hand tightly and asked, What are you thinking about? Gu Mingming looked at the demon, and the question she wanted to ask got stuck in her throat. She did not dare to ask easily. Seeing that Gu Mingming wanted to say something but stopped, the demon's face turned colder and he said, Thinking about your 6 wild men? Gu Mingming choked and thought to herself, 6? Where did these 6 come from? She counted with her fingers, Elvis, Leah, Ian, Ah and Huda, Jiaoyu and Kanwu, F***K. All 3 of them were biological sons. Elvis was the original official and legal couple. Ian was just a subordinate, and there was no ambiguity at all. If they were to talk about wild men, Leah would be the only one. Gu Mingming was indignant, but she did not dare to rebuke the demon openly, so she could only mutter softly, He's not a wild man. The demon flipped himself over and rode on Gu Mingming's back, pressing the top of Gu Mingming's head with one hand, and holding her chin with the other. He squinted his eyes and exuded a dangerous aura, saying, The males around you other than me are all wild men. Gu Mingming was indignant. You're not even my man. What right do you have to say that? The demon pinched Gu Mingming's face, and covered her lips with his. He just stuck there, and did not take any further action. After a long while he slowly released her and said, Now you are. Chapter 533. Displeased, the demon looked at Gu Mingming coldly and said, "All right, then I will first kill that wolf on your collarbone, then that fox, then that bird, and finally swallow those 3 little ones in one mouthful." Gu Mingming looked at Gu Mingming coldly. Gu Mingming felt a chill down her spine and she slapped the ground and stood up, saying, "If you dare to touch a single strand of hair on my hubby and children, I will fight you to the death." The demon sneered in disdain and said, "Even the 6 of them together can't beat me, and you, fight me to the death?" Gu Mingming was so angry that tears kept flowing down her face. She bit her lower lip and said, "Let me tell you, unless I die. Otherwise, no one can even think of hurting my hubby and children." The demon's eyes turned cold and he said, "Are you threatening me?" Gu Mingming was stunned and nodded. "Yes, I am threatening you, so what?" The demon stood up and approached Gu Mingming step by step. He watched as she staggered backwards until she had nowhere to retreat, and stared at him with widened eyes. He squinted his eyes dangerously, and his pupils were vertical. Gu Mingming could even see his poisonous fangs secreting venom in his mouth, and it was obvious that he was angry. She made up her mind. "So what if I die?" She straightened her neck and puffed out her chest, saying, "Anyway, if anything happens to my hubby and children, I don't want to live anymore. Why don't you just kill me directly, so that I won't feel as if my heart is being fried?" The demon's brows were tightly knitted together, as if he was hesitating whether he should just fulfill Gu Mingming's request and kill her. His long and cold fingers caressed Gu Mingming's jawbone. After a long time he finally spoke, "Snake." Gu Mingming's hair stood on end, and she stared at the demon for a long time without reacting. The demon glanced at Gu Mingming impatiently and said, "Stay in the Snake King Valley with me, and I will spare your wild men from death." Gu Mingming glared angrily and said, "I already said they are not wild men." The demon laughed coldly and said, "Do you want me to be a mistress?" Gu Mingming said, "I have nothing to do with you, all right?" The demon's face was gloomy and his gaze was cold as he said, "You slept with me, and you still say you have nothing to do with me?" Gu Mingming almost bit her own tongue. She suddenly felt that she could not explain herself. She scratched her head and said, "Who slept with you? At most, we're just kidnappers and hostages, okay? Give me back my husband and son, and we'll leave immediately." The evildoer's pupils became vertical lines. It was clear that he was extremely angry. He said darkly, "If you dare leave, I'll kill them right now." Gu Mingming sat on the ground shamelessly and kicked her legs, asking, "Then what exactly do you want?" The evildoer moved his jaw, as if he was suppressing the anger in his heart, and said, "You stay with me. I'll release your wild man and save your son." Gu Mingming looked up and asked, "You have a way to save my son?" The evildoer sneered and said, "Is there any poison in this world that I cannot cure?" Gu Mingming jumped up from the ground and grabbed the demon's arm tightly with both hands. "Then please save them. They are still children, and have been unconscious for a long time. If we delay any longer..." The evildoer was not moved and only said coldly, "I'll save them, you stay." Gu Mingming bit her lower lip. Using her little life in exchange for the safety of her 4 sons was always worth it. Chapter 534. The demon stretched out his hand with his palm facing upwards, gesturing for Gu Mingming to hand over her little hand. Gu Mingming had no choice but to give herself a line of "hold me up," before obediently placing her little hand into the demon's hand. The demon was finally satisfied, and his pupils gradually returned to normal. He looked down at Gu Mingming and said, "Snake my name." Gu Mingming replied, "Oh." Snake was displeased and said, "My name is not Oh." Gu Mingming put on a fake smile and said, "Great King Snake, I wish you happiness as boundless as the East Sea and longevity as everlasting as the South Mountain." The corners of Snake's lips curled up slightly, and he said, "Say it again." Gu Mingming called out "Snake" repeatedly for half an hour like a repeater before she finally managed to please this master. He happily pulled Gu Mingming into his arms and said, "I am a man of my word. I will bring you to meet your wild men, and let you personally confirm that I let them go." You are willing to let me meet them?" Gu Mingming's eyes were as bright as a deer's, and she could not suppress her smile. She looked as if she was glowing. Snake was dazzled by Gu Mingming's smile, and felt a little jealous. He turned his face away coldly and said, "Stop smiling, you're so ugly." Gu Mingming covered her mouth with her hand and nodded in agreement. "I won't smile, I'm really ugly." Snake brought Gu Mingming around half of the valley and arrived at the entrance of a cave. Groups of colorful snakes crawled all over the ground outside the cave. Not to mention a place to land. Even a mosquito would not be able to find a place to land. Gu Mingming had a natural fear of snakes, and she had goosebumps all over her body. She instinctively hid in Snake's arms, and this small action pleased Snake. He did not say a word and did not slow down. He just walked straight ahead. The groups of snakes automatically opened up a path for Snake to pass through. After he passed through, they closed up again and sealed off the path of retreat. After entering the cave, Snake placed Gu Mingming on the ground, but he refused to let go and just held on to her little hand tightly. Gu Mingming immediately saw Elvis and Leah, who were lying unconscious on the ground, as well as Ian, who had been thrown to the side and could not return to his human form. "Hubby, Leah, Ian." Gu Mingming wanted to run over to check on their injuries, but Snake held her hand tightly and did not allow her to go over. Gu Mingming turned back to look at Snake. "You promised to let them off." Snake raised his head and said, "If you care too much about them, it will make me want to go back on my word." Gu Mingming froze on the spot and shook her head. I don't care at all. Don't go back on your word. Hurry up and save them." Snake's face darkened. He pulled Gu Mingming into his arms and locked her tightly. He pulled her little face towards his chest, and then transformed his lower body into a snake beast. He raised the scales on his snake tail, and made a small cut on Elvis, Leah and Ian's bodies. He then retracted his tail and transformed back to his human form before releasing Gu Mingming slightly. She could turn around to look at the three of them, but she was still unable to leave his arms. Elvis frowned and let out a soft sound. Gu Mingming was overjoyed and shouted, "Hubby, hubby!" Chapter 535. This weak call almost made Gu Mingming cry. She instinctively wanted to pounce into Elvis's arms, but was hugged tightly by Snake. A cold and emotionless voice rang beside her ear. "To me, it's easier to kill them than to save them." Gu Mingming did not dare to act rashly. She could only look at Elvis from a distance that was just a few steps away, but could not be crossed. "Hubby, how are you feeling now? Do you feel uncomfortable anywhere?" Elvis forced himself to sit up and shook his head, trying to regain his composure as soon as possible. After panting heavily, Elvis then realized that Gu Mingming was in the arms of another stranger. Her little face was full of tears, and it made one's heart ache. Elvis bared his teeth. He wanted to stand up and attack Snake to snatch Gu Mingming back, but Snake snickered and swung his snake tail to sweep Elvis away. Elvis was like a broken doll that was thrown against the wall. Then his whole body fell down. A huge hole was smashed into the wall. Some gravel fell onto Elvis's body. Elvis coughed, and a mouthful of blood flowed down from the side of his lips. But he gritted his teeth and stood up again. He swayed and rushed toward Snake. Snake squinted his eyes. With an obvious murderous intent, he said coldly, "Courting death." The snake tail swung again, but stopped less than a meter away from Elvis. Snake frowned and looked down at Gu Mingming, who had buried her face in his arms. He called out coldly, "Tu Ming." Gu Mingming looked up at Snake with her mouth full of blood. Tears streamed down her face, and the corners of her lips drooped. She said in a nasal voice, "I won't allow you to hurt my hubby. I won't." Snake looked at the wound on his arm where a piece of flesh had been bitten off. He turned to Elvis with a dark face and swung his tail down without hesitation. Then he scooped Gu Mingming up into his arms. He gritted his teeth and said, "Stupid woman." Before he finished his sentence, he had already dashed out of the cave towards a waterfall. Snake threw Gu Mingming into the waterfall and kept pouring water into her mouth. Then he pressed his fingers against her throat to force her to vomit. Only when she had vomited out all her bile did Snake carry her ashore with furrowed brows. He started a fire and dried her wet body. Gu Mingming's brows were still tightly furrowed, and she shut her eyes tightly. Her entire body was burning hot, but she hugged herself and shouted that she was cold. His face was ashen, and his lips were purple. It was obvious that he had been poisoned. Snake transformed into a half-orc and wrapped himself around Gu Mingming. Then, he pried open her mouth and stuck his snake tongue into her mouth. Inch by inch, he cleaned up the blood that she had accidentally swallowed just now along her throat. Even the air exhaled by the 1,000-year-old Snake King was poisonous. This stupid woman had bitten through his skin and swallowed his blood. She was really courting death. For thousands of years, no one had ever dared to offend him like this. She was the first one, and also the only one. According to his temperament, he should have just left her on the spot and watched as her body festered to death because of her own stupidity. But just by seeing her frown, he actually felt that it was difficult to breathe. Chapter 536. Mighty Snake King. A clear male voice rang from the other side of the waterfall. Snake did not turn back to look at him, only saying coldly, "Scram." Cole was not angry, he just maintained his usual calm tone and said, "Mighty Snake King, don't be angry. I just want to give you a suggestion. That snow fox might be the best candidate to take care of this little female." Snake glanced at him coldly and laughed sinisterly. "Do you think that fox can cure me of my poison?" Cole lowered his head and said, "Of course not. Only you can detoxify your poison. But females are different from males, their bodies are too weak. If they don't nurse themselves well, they might not be able to hold on." Snake's beast pressure exploded, instantly suppressing Cole. He carried Gu Mingming up and turned to leave, not even giving Cole a supercilious look. Back at the cave, the huge pile of fruits had already been buried according to Gu Mingming's instructions. No one knew if new fruit trees could grow, but the cave was clean. Snake circled Gu Mingming with his tail, forcing the poison out of her body over and over again. The purple on her lips had already faded, but her face was still green, and she remained unconscious at first. He could still feed her some water, but later on, she could not even pry open her teeth. The tighter Snake hugged her, the more she trembled. In the end, Snake could only place Gu Mingming on the stone platform before instructing a little snake to find Leah. When Leah dragged his weak body into the cave, he saw a barely breathing Gu Mingming curled up on a stone platform. Snake stood far away, staring at Gu Mingming without blinking. Gu Mingming's body trembled. Leah did not greet Snake, because he had nothing to say. As a third level, he was weaker than an ant in front of a beast king. He did not want to waste his breath saying some heroic words. He wanted to make the best use of every second to take good care of Gu Mingming. Carrying Gu Mingming in his arms, Leah transformed into a half-orc and used his large tail to wrap Gu Mingming up tightly. He used his tongue to lightly lick Gu Mingming's little nose, gently rubbing against her ear, using a deep and affectionate voice to whisper into her ear, "Mingming, I'm here. Don't be afraid, don't be afraid. You have to hold on, okay? You promised that you wouldn't leave me alone." Snake clenched his fists tightly behind him. He also wanted to hug Gu Mingming like that, but this damned body did not have the same warmth as that fox. His blood was cold, and no matter how tightly he hugged her, he would never be able to warm her at all. Leah pressed his face against Gu Mingming's face gently, caressing Gu Mingming's arm while saying, "I need Elvis to help me. I can't make Mingming recover by myself." Snake frowned and said, "Just tell me what you need. I can also satisfy you." Leah sneered and glanced sideways at Snake. Elvis is her first partner. The sense of security he can give her is something that no one else can replace. Snake's pupils trembled and turned into a vertical line, before slowly returning to normal. He stuck his tongue out at the entrance of the cave. Not long after, Elvis was also brought over. Chapter 537. Elvis furrowed his brows tightly and hugged Gu Mingming in his arms, whispering softly, "Xiaoming, I'm here, I'm here." Leah stood up and walked to Snake's side saying, "I need prey. Please allow me to hunt in the Snake King Valley." Snake did not say a word, and just gave a look to the little snakes behind him. Not long later, many little snakes carried their prey and swam in, stopping in front of Leah. Leah checked the prey one by one, and his expression became more serious, asking, "You're giving Gu Mingming this to eat?" Snake was displeased, saying, "This is the best prey in the Snake King Valley." Leah pointed to a hole on the prey's body, saying, "Your hunting method is to inject poison into the prey's body to make them lose their ability to resist. This poison is nothing to you, but it will take Gu Mingming's life." Snake was taken aback, as if he did not think of this detail at the start. He frowned and muttered, "No wonder I vomited so badly the last time. If Gu Mingming was sober now, she would definitely complain. Brother, I vomited so badly the last time because you roasted me with your skin and hair, alright? It had nothing to do with poison." "No." Snake looked at Elvis, who was hugging Gu Mingming, feeling increasingly irritated. His chest was so stuffy, maybe going out to hunt was a good way to relieve it. Thinking about this, Snake said with a cold face, "You stay here to take care of Tu Meng. I'll go out to hunt." Leah did not comment. This was someone else's territory. If Snake did not nod, no matter how capable he and Elvis were, they would not be able to hunt any edible prey. Moreover, Snake's presence felt weird. Leah was more than happy for him to get out. Snake turned into his beast form the moment he left the cave, his body like a train, driving straight into the depths of the forest. He originally wanted to vent his anger, but he instinctively avoided those fruit trees that were on the verge of extinction. Damn it! Snake stood in front of a fruit tree, and really wanted to use his tail to break this obstacle. But the image of Gu Mingming's regretful and heartache towards the pile of fruits kept appearing in his mind. After swinging his tail twice, Snake still went around that fruit tree, and continued forward. Meanwhile, in the cave, Elvis and Lee's hearts were extremely heavy. As males, they knew too well what the difference in power meant. In the afternoon, they could still lie to themselves that Snake seemed to be very interested in Gu Mingming. If he just wanted to mate with Gu Mingming, they would not object to having another Beast King level member in their family. Even if she wanted Elvis to hand over his position as the first partner, Elvis would personally end her with a smile on his face, giving up the position to this perversely powerful Snake King. Because with him around, no one in the entire beast world would have the ability to hurt a single strand of Gu Mingming's hair. But it had only been half a day since they last met, and look at how much Gu Mingming had been tortured by him. Elvis hugged Gu Mingming tightly, his brows furrowed as he asked, "If we escape, what are the chances of success?" Leah glanced disdainfully at the colorful snakes blocking the cave entrance and said, "These snakes are just wild beasts, but they are extremely poisonous. With my abilities, I won't be able to take more than 5 steps if my skin is scratched. You're a little better than me. You can probably run 10 steps. Chapter 538. It's no use. Leah patted Elvis's shoulder and signaled him to retract his beast pressure. They are snakes that have been following Snake around all year round and are long used to the Beast King's coercion. Our normal coercion is completely useless in front of them. Elvis remained silent. Seeing how weak Gu Mingming was, his heart ached to the extreme. He could only ask in a low voice, "Then what do we do now? I'm afraid Xiaoming can't hold on." Leah caressed Gu Mingming's little face gently. He then looked at Elvis and asked, "How's your stamina now?" Elvis looked at Leah from the corner of his eyes, waiting for him to continue. Leah said, "The poison has caused the blood in Xiaoming's body to start coagulating. You have to let Mingming's blood flow, so that the antidote Snake placed in her body can take effect. But you were just beaten up by Snake. Can you still hold on?" Elvis clenched his teeth and smiled bitterly. "Even if I can't just let Xiaoming die like this." Leah pursed his lips and said, "If you really can't hold on, I can do it." Elvis stared at Leah for a moment and smiled. "I won't let Xiaoming mate with you against her own will." Leah nodded. "Then I'll stand guard at the side. Hurry up and finish it before Snake returns, in case he goes crazy and hurts Gu Mingming." Elvis nodded and carried Gu Mingming to the deepest part of the cave. He removed his beast skin dress and laid it under Gu Mingming's body. He then gently removed her dress and kissed her fragrant shoulder. He whispered into her ear, "Xiaoming, do you know? I love to see you become emotional because of me. So, if you can do it, respond to me, alright? Compared to this quietness, I love it even more when you hug my neck and say you love me." Elvis's kiss traveled up Gu Mingming's collarbone and finally covered both of her lips. His nimble tongue forcefully pried open her tightly clenched teeth. Before he could conquer her territory, his mouth was filled with the taste of blood. Elvis groaned in pain, but refused to retract his tongue. He sucked on Gu Mingming's lips and used his blood to nourish her body. It had only been 2 days, but Gu Mingming had obviously lost so much weight. Snake must not have taken good care of her. She probably had not eaten anything these few days. The blood of a level 5 beast was very nutritious. If he could help Xiao Ming regain some of her strength, even if his tongue was bitten off and he bled to death, so what? Elvis caressed Gu Mingming's arm with his big hands, trying his best to help her circulate blood. His big tail swept Gu Mingming's legs, trying his best to take care of every part of her body. But even so, Gu Mingming did not respond at all. She just laid there quietly like a porcelain doll that had lost her soul. She shut her eyes tightly, frowned, and her teeth chattered. Elvis turned all his energy into love and gave it all to Gu Mingming. Then, he suddenly lost all his energy like a toy whose battery had been depleted. He laid on Gu Mingming's body and lost consciousness. Leah smiled bitterly as he dealt with the aftermath. He first carried Elvis to one side, then used a beast skin to wipe Gu Mingming's body clean. Then, he hugged her tightly in his arms, using his own body temperature to maintain Gu Mingming's body temperature that had risen after much difficulty. Even though the lingering aura on her body was torturing him physically and mentally, Leah only wished for her to be alive at this moment. Just living in peace would be enough. Aside from the topic, do I still need to explain what is in the ellipsis? Come, verify the group number, 4927799273. Chapter 539. When Snake dragged his prey, whose bones had been crushed inch by inch back, he sharply sensed the dispirited aura in the cave. With his eyes straightened, he attacked Elvis at lightning speed. If you kill him, Gu Ming won't be able to live. Leah spoke calmly, finishing the last word just as Snake's fangs were about to touch Elvis's artery. The blood vessels on Snake's face flowed rapidly, and his lower body was in the shape of a snake. One could almost see the snake's scales rising slightly. He wanted to kill Gu Mingming without a care in the world, but when his gaze landed on Gu Mingming's face, which was no longer ghastly pale, he recalled the words she said when she bit him in the day, and the tearful look on her face. Snake forcefully stopped his attack and slammed his thick tail onto the ground, creating a pit. The plump prey was thrown at the entrance of the cave, and Snake swam out of the cave to vent his anger wantonly in the valley. An ancient tree was uprooted, and the tree trunks were crushed into sawdust by Snake's tail. But in the end, none of the destroyed trees were fruit trees. Leah placed Gu Mingming in Elvis's arms, and even though Elvis was unconscious, he still hugged Gu Mingming tightly. And Gu Mingming also tilted her head slightly, pressing her face against Elvis's chest, listening to his heartbeat. He was sleeping so peacefully. Leah dragged his weak body to deal with the prey. He looked at the little snakes guarding the cave entrance and tried to take a step forward. The little snakes did not stop Leah from leaving, so it was obvious that Snake's instructions were only for Gu Mingming alone. That was good too. Leah carried the prey out of the cave and instinctively found a water source to wash and deal with the prey Snake brought back. This fellow should have always swallowed them alive. This hunting method of crushing the bones and stabbing them into the flesh was too perverted. Leah could almost imagine how Snake had been thinking about how to vent his anger when he was hunting. Shaking his head helplessly, he carefully removed every piece of bone from the meat, and then cut the meat into pieces. By the time Leah settled everything and returned, Elvis had already woken up and was staring at Snake with widened eyes. Perhaps the radiation from the collision of their gazes was too strong, causing Gu Mingming to feel a sense of pressure. Frowning, she moaned and felt a gush of warmth licking her face. Gu Mingming squinted her eyes, and when she saw Elvis's face, the corners of her lips could not help but curve upwards. She lifted her arm that was as heavy as lead and hooked it around Elvis's neck. Using the force, she flipped her body towards Elvis and found a relatively comfortable position to nestle in Elvis's arms. She murmured, "Hubby, I had a weird dream just now. Elvis kissed her hair gently and asked, "What did you dream about?" Gu Mingming's throat was a little dry and she coughed softly. Leah passed over a cup of water at the right time, and Elvis drank a small sip before passing it to Gu Mingming with his lips. After moistening her throat, Gu Mingming continued, "I dreamed that I could not move no matter what. I clearly heard you calling me, but I could not respond to you. Then, I even did something shameful." Elvis chuckled and rubbed Gu Mingming's waist, saying, "Silly, that was not a dream." Chapter 540. Gu Mingming instinctively opened her arms to protect Elvis, looking at Snake warily, not daring to say a word. The pain all over her body, as if she had been run over by a car, told her what she had just experienced. But it was not illegal to sleep with her own husband. Why did she feel as if she was caught in the act? Gu Mingming turned back to look at Elvis, nodding her head in confirmation. That's right. The one she slept with was her own husband. Seeing how Gu Mingming was protecting Elvis, Snake felt even more frustrated. He hooked his finger and said, "Come over, or I will kill them." Gu Mingming bit her lower lip, using the beast's skin to wrap herself up tightly, supporting her exhausted body to slowly take a small step towards Snake. Snake frowned, hooking his finger in his direction, gesturing for Gu Mingming to come closer. Gu Mingming turned back to look at Elvis, taking another small step towards Snake. Snake's patience had run out. He raised his snake tail and whipped it towards Elvis. Gu Mingming could not react in time. She reached out and pounced towards Snake's snake tail, wanting to use her own body to block this attack. Elvis's reaction was much faster than Gu Mingming's. Before the snake tail touched Gu Mingming, he turned around and protected her in his arms, using his own back to receive Snake's tail. Snake himself was also shocked by Gu Mingming. He held back much of his strength. If not, this whip would have directly split Elvis into two. Elvis spat out a mouthful of blood. Gu Mingming was so anxious that she cried, holding on to Elvis tightly, shouting, "Leah, Leah, quickly come and look at Elvis." Leah walked forward, pulled Elvis out from Gu Mingming's arms and placed him at the side, then held on to Gu Mingming's shoulders with both hands. Looking straight into her eyes, he said calmly, "Don't do such things in the future, understand?" Gu Mingming had no idea what Leah was talking about. She just wanted Leah to quickly treat Elvis. So she nodded perfunctorily. I know. Leah saw through Gu Mingming's perfunctory act. He sighed, then said in a serious tone, "Do you know that you almost scared Elvis and I to death when you were poisoned this time? If anything happens to you, we won't be able to die in peace. If we still have any weight in your heart, promise me that you will prioritize your own safety under any circumstances. As long as you're fine, the two of us can definitely pull through. Do not expose yourself to danger for anyone. Do you understand?" Elvis clutched his chest as he looked at Gu Mingming. His gaze was clearly the same as Lee's. Only on this point, he would not indulge Gu Mingming. Gu Mingming nodded and said, "I know, I promise I won't do it again. Hurry and take a look at Elvis, he's badly injured." Leah then released his grip and turned around to check on Elvis's injuries. Elvis gave her a reassuring smile, wanting her to believe that he was fine and that he was fine. However, his body was badly mutilated and his face was ashen. With a single glance, one could see that he was weak and fragile. How could a smile be able to deceive the world? Snake's snake tail was trembling as he resisted the urge to attack. Narrowing his eyes, he used his tail to wrap Gu Mingming up and swam out of the cave. The night sky was as dark as ink, thick and heavy, but it could not conceal the fierce anger emanating from Snake's body. Gu Mingming felt as if she could see black smoke billowing from Snake's body. Digression. It's time to say goodbye to my babies again. Chapter 541. Where are we going? Gu Mingming asked timidly. Snake stopped in his tracks, but did not turn back to look at Gu Mingming. To where? He had not thought about it either. He just did not want to see Gu Mingming and Elvis being so lovey-dovey in the cave again. So he brought Gu Mingming out before he killed Elvis. Snake, about biting you in the day today. I'm sorry, I apologize. Gu Mingming decided to be a good girl, who was brave enough to admit her mistakes. Seeing Snake's back stiffen, she shivered and immediately tried to excuse herself. But that was because you hurt my hubby first, so I bit you in a moment of desperation. As the saying goes, the one who provoked me first is cheap. You are also half responsible for this. Snake took a deep breath, turned his head and said with a black face, "Don't ever mention your wild men in front of me again. Or else I have 10,000 ways to make you watch me tear them apart. And you won't even be able to hurt yourself." Gu Mingming knew that Snake definitely had that kind of ability. Elvis might be strong outside, but in front of a pervert like Snake, the difference in their abilities was too great. Even someone like Gu Mingming, who did not really understand what the hierarchy meant, could tell that this was like a WDO wrestler beating up a primary school student. I won't mention, then don't be angry." Snake's face was cold as he stretched out a hand, palm facing upwards, to Meng. Gu Mingming reflexively placed her hand in his palm, then smiled bitterly. She was just like a domesticated pet dog. Snake held Gu Mingming's little hand, then his emotions calmed down. He slowly kept his snake tail, and transformed back into his human form, pulling Gu Mingming into his arms, hugging her before letting go. Gu Mingming felt a little awkward. She pointed at Snake's arm and asked, Does the wound still hurt?" Snake looked down at the wound that had already healed completely and frowned. How did it heal so quickly? If it had not healed, would she also look at him with the same gaze she used to look at Elvis's wound? Snake thought for a moment, then placed his hand by his mouth, sticking out his poisonous fangs and biting down. What are you doing?" Gu Mingming was shocked, and reached out to grab Snake's arm. But Snake dodged backwards and said with a cold face, "My blood is poisonous, you can't touch it." Gu Mingming retracted her hand awkwardly, and took a small step back. She stretched her neck and pointed at Snake's arm. "Your teeth are poisonous too, right?" Snake nodded and said, "Deadly poison." Gu Mingming thought for a while and asked, "So is your teeth more poisonous, or your blood more poisonous? But, if you show symptoms of being poisoned, which poison should I detoxify first? Do you have the antidote? Give it to me in advance." Snake was stunned for a moment before he suddenly laughed. "Are you an idiot? How did I get poisoned by myself?" Gu Mingming stared at Snake in a daze and smiled. "Isn't this great?" He looked good when he smiled. "Why did you have to keep a straight face all day long? As if someone owed you $8 million. Why bother?" Snake was stunned by Gu Mingming's words. He reached out to touch the corner of his lips. He was actually really smiling. "Nice to look at?" Snake asked carefully. Chapter 542. When Snake brought Gu Mingming back to the cave, Elvis and Leah had already disappeared. Gu Mingming wanted to ask, but she did not dare to open her mouth when she saw Snake's "if you dare to ask, I will kill them immediately" expression. But looking at the roasted meat that was crispy on the outside and tender on the inside, Gu Mingming felt much more at ease. Other than Leah, no one else could roast meat of this standard. He still had the mood to roast meat, which meant that he and Elvis were at least safe. With this understanding, Gu Mingming felt much more relaxed. Once she relaxed, Gu Mingming also started to feel hungry. After all, she had only eaten a little fruit for the past 2 to 3 days. Gu Mingming squatted beside the roasted meat, looked at Snake and asked, "Is this for me?" Snake replied with a cold "yeah," then sat at the side and watched Gu Mingming eat heartily. Snake did not know why, but he just felt that the food in Gu Mingming's hands was exceptionally delicious. So he leaned closer, opened his mouth and said, "Ah." Gu Mingming looked at Snake's pleading expression, and did not know whether to laugh or cry. Why was this fellow's personality so polarizing? When he was angry, he could not differentiate between friend and foe, and was unreasonable. But when he was calm, he could look so cute and arrogant, making people speechless. Gu Mingming tore off a piece of roasted meat, and sent it into Snake's mouth. Snake chewed it seriously then swallowed it. It was quite delicious, right? Perhaps there was no taste of meat, and it was not as fresh as eating immediately after being slaughtered. It was also a little hot. The texture was really ordinary, but when paired with Gu Mingming's smiling face, it seemed to have a chemical reaction, making it so unpalatable and unique. Gu Mingming stared at Snake's face for a long time, but could not tell whether he liked it or not. Or did he not like it? Do you still want more? Gu Mingming asked. Snake shook his head and said, You eat, I will watch you eat. Gu Mingming did not stand on ceremony with him. This was prepared by Leah for her. Gu Mingming's mood improved as she ate the roasted meat in big mouthfuls. After Gu Mingming was full, Snake sat beside her and asked, Are you afraid of snakes? Gu Mingming nodded her head honestly and said, I'm not afraid of many animals, but snakes are definitely at the king level. When I went to the zoo, there was a picture of a huge python with a human. As long as I saw it, I would run away and not dare to challenge it. Just the thought of a snake touching me makes my whole body uncomfortable. Hey look, even my hair is standing on end. Snake looked at the hairs on Gu Mingming's arms that were standing up straight, and he was a little disappointed. Wolves are also very ferocious animals. Why don't I see you being afraid? Gu Mingming smiled. Who says I'm not afraid? You don't even know how scared I was the first time I saw Elvis's original body. I almost fainted. For a very long time, I always felt that Elvis and Leah were keeping me as a reserve food and would eat me anytime. Upon hearing Gu Mingming's words, Snake felt much better. In the future, will you slowly stop being afraid of snakes? Snake asked. Gu Mingming thought for a while and shook her head. Not sure I am really. I'm not afraid of snakes. Snake frowned and asked, Are you afraid of me? Gu Mingming did not answer but asked back, Do you want me to be afraid of you? Snake remained silent for a long time and did not reply. He just looked at Gu Mingming quietly. Aside from the topic. Chapter 543. Gu Mingming felt pressured by Snake's stare. She smacked her lips and sorted out her words before saying, Actually, you are quite nice when you are not angry. Although you are a little awkward, you are not hard to get along with. But when you are angry, TSK, you are definitely possessed by a demon king. It is too scary. Snake looked at Gu Mingming and suddenly smiled. It is good that you know to be afraid. Don't provoke me in the future. Gu Mingming cupped her fists and said, All right, mighty king. Snake was amused by her comical look, and the lump of stuffy air in his chest slowly dissipated. He cleared his throat and asked, Do you feel uncomfortable anywhere else? Gu Mingming seriously felt around and said, I just feel that I do not have much strength. Everything else is fine. Snake said, You were the one who bit me but you still had to ask me to save you. Why are you so useless? Gu Mingming was speechless. She turned her face to the side and refused to talk to Snake. Snake stretched out his hand and shouted, Tu Ming. Gu Mingming reflexively placed her hand on Snake's and was instantly held. Gu Mingming really wanted to give herself a slap. Where was her dignity? Where was her dignity? Snake smiled faintly and said, It is finally warm again. Gu Mingming glanced sideways at Snake's cold face and asked, Today must have made you worried too? Snake's expression froze and he said, No. Gu Mingming could not help but laugh. She did not expose him or go along with him. She just looked at Snake. Snake cleared his throat and said, I saved you because I have something to ask you, so I cannot let you die for now. Gu Mingming nodded and said, What do you want to ask? Snake was silent for a moment before he slowly opened his mouth and said, I want to know, that world of yours, what is it like? Gu Mingming was taken aback. She asked tentatively, You mean the world of the beast deity? Snake shook his head and said, I know that you are not from the beast world, but another independent world. The people there do not know how to transform, and know many strange things. But their physiques are extremely weak. Not to mention orcs, even ordinary wild beasts can easily kill them. Gu Mingming's expression gradually lost control as she looked at Snake with a heated gaze. How did you know? Snake looked back at Gu Mingming and said, My mother beast is the previous messenger of the beast deity. Cough, cough, cough. Gu Mingming choked and coughed until her face turned red, and she could not say a word. Your mother is a joker, but you're a freakishly strong tsundere? This gene had mutated, right? Wasn't the difference too big? Tu Ming? Snake's expression was rather solemn. He wanted to pat Gu Mingming's back to soothe her breathing, but he realized that the spot where he had bitten himself was still bleeding. He retracted his hand forcefully, and could only watch as Gu Mingming coughed like a dog in front of him. Wait a minute. Gu Mingming finally stopped coughing, and turned to look at Snake. The previous messenger of the beast deity is your mother, so. Leader, how old are you this year? Snake cleared his throat and said evasively. About, over 1,000 years old. Chapter 544. Snake used his uninjured hand to hold on to Gu Mingming's little hand that was poking his face. He gestured for her to sit properly and said, I have never seen my mother before. When she died, I was still an egg. All my memories of my mother originated from my father's inherited memories. I don't know if it is because of my father's memories. I am very curious about her. Gu Mingming was taken aback. She said with a face full of shock, Don't tell me you mistook your father's feelings for your mother as your feelings for your mother? Gu Mingming was surprised that her tongue did not get knotted after she finished her sentence, like a tongue twister. Snake looked at Gu Mingming. After a long while, he shook his head and said, I didn't know in the past. But now I know that there is a difference between curiosity and liking someone. Gu Mingming sat beside Snake and patted him on the shoulder. Yeah, you must have the right values. You must have the basic ethics. Snake nodded. Gu Mingming sat beside Snake and patted his shoulder. Snake sneered. He poked Gu Mingming's little head and said, Acting mature in front of me? Thinking of Snake's 1,000-odd years of age, Gu Mingming still sat obediently and said seriously, No, I don't dare to. Snake raised his brows and said, Are you despising me for being old? Gu Mingming pursed her lips. She could not hold back her laughter and said, Sorry. I have never seen a demon who has lived for more than 1,000 years. I am too excited, let me laugh for a while. Seeing Gu Mingming squatting at the side and laughing like a dog, the corners of Snake's lips curled up unknowingly. He just quietly watched her laugh like a fool. When she was tired of laughing, she leaned against the stone platform and looked up at Snake. She said, Sorry, I have laughed enough. That, ha. Let me laugh for a while more. Snake was not angry. He just quietly watched Gu Mingming laugh until she could not make a sound. When she was laughing so hard that she couldn't make a sound, he poked her head and said, Stop laughing, or I'll eat you up. Gu Mingming tried to hold back her laughter. She calmed herself down and said, Your face does not look more than 20 years old. It is really too deceptive. So I could not hold it in, and laughed a little exaggeratedly. Old man, please forgive me. Snake raised his eyebrows, gritted his teeth and repeated, Elder? Gu Mingming felt a chill down her spine. She smiled apologetically and said, Leader, I was wrong. I am an old lady. Snake pinched her little face and did not argue with her. He only said quietly, I really want to know what those things in my memory are like. That's why I once traveled around the beast world, but couldn't find a female like her. Later on, I forgot how I came to this place and unknowingly, I had stayed here for a very long time. Then this place was called the Snake King Valley. There was obviously no one who could stop me, but I could not even take a step out of this place. Gu Mingming listened attentively to Snake's words and waited for him to finish before asking, You joined forces with Cole because you were curious about your mother? Snake was displeased as he raised his head and said, It's not an alliance. He's the one presenting me a treasure. Gu Mingming pointed at her own nose and said, The treasure he offered is me? Snake nodded and said, He said he would bring the new messenger of the beast deity to me and present her to me. I accepted, that's all. Chapter 545. Would you believe me if I said it had nothing to do with me? Snake asked instead of answering. Gu Mingming nodded and said, As long as you say it, I will believe you. Snake asked why. Gu Mingming smiled faintly and said, With your abilities, you don't have to go through so much trouble to catch me. Even if you don't use the little wolves to threaten me, I have nowhere to escape to. Snake curled his lips and raised his brows. Since you already know, why are you still asking? Gu Mingming shrugged and said, No matter what, you have to give people a chance to explain themselves. Snake did not say anything, and just looked at Gu Mingming quietly. After a long silence, he said, "It's not me." Gu Mingming smiled and nodded, saying, "Then I have no more questions. What do you want to know about that world? I can tell you everything I know." Snake thought about it, but shook his head. Gu Mingming was confused. "Aren't you very curious about the world your mother originally lived in?" Snake looked down at his and Gu Mingming's shadows under the moonlight, and remained silent for a moment before saying, "I used to be very curious, but I don't know when it started. I only remember that I was very curious, but I can't even remember what I was curious about." Gu Mingming thought about it and agreed. It had been over 1,000 years. Any kind of curiosity should have been washed away in the face of such a long time. Using her shoulder to bump Snake, Gu Mingming said, "Your mother is super funny, do you know that?" Snake looked at Gu Mingming's sparkling eyes and shook his head lightly, saying, "In my memory, she was very serious, very dignified, and always looked like she was out of reach. Even when there were no outsiders around, she would always have a lot on her mind. Even my beast father did not know what she was thinking about. As far as I can remember, she has never smiled like this before, nor has she ever cried as freely as you do. She never let others know what she cared about, what she liked or hated. She was completely different from you." Gu Mingming looked at Snake with a "whoever believes you is an idiot" expression and said, "You mean to say that your mother is the one who walks the cold and aloof path, while I am the snail running on the joking path, right?" Snake nodded his head slowly with a sincere expression. Gu Mingming slapped her thighs and jumped up. She had wanted to stand opposite Snake, but her little hand was still in his grasp, and she could not pull it out. As a result, this jump almost caused her to fall. Snake instinctively reached out to catch her, but realized that the wound on his arm had not healed completely, so he could only forcefully retract his outstretched hand. Then, he used all his strength to pull her little hand back into his arms in a parabola. Gu Mingming only felt her vision blur, and by the time she stabilized herself, she was already lying on Snake's chest. She raised her little face and blinked her eyes at Snake's green eyes that were inches away from hers. Clearing her throat, she said, "All right, I am a joker." Snake smiled faintly and placed Gu Mingming in his arms. "Sit down and talk. Don't move." Gu Mingming shifted her butt and said, I can just sit at the side and talk." Snake retracted his arm and held Gu Mingming tightly. "It's safest in my arms. You won't get hurt." Gu Mingming sighed and accepted her fate helplessly. Who asked her to almost fall flat on her face when she tried to stand up just now? Passive, too passive. Chapter 546. Your mother is the messenger of the beast deity, and I am also the messenger of the beast deity. So we are colleagues. Shouldn't you call me auntie? Gu Mingming put on the kind smile of an old auntie and said, "Come, call me Auntie Mingming." Snake looked at Gu Mingming, as if he was looking at an idiot, and said, "The so-called messenger of the beast deity is just someone who transmigrated from another world to complete a certain mission. You and my mother beast are probably not that close." As Snake said, he pinched Gu Mingming's chin and squinted his eyes, saying with a faint smile, "Moreover, I am over 1,000 years old. Do you dare to agree to call you auntie?" Gu Mingming pouted and said, "Forget it, the cost of being your auntie is too high. You are old, so you are right. Don't take advantage of your seniority. Please continue." Snake sneered and released Gu Mingming's chin. He rested his head on Gu Mingming's shoulder, and his gaze landed on the mating mark on her collarbone. "Tell me, how did you transmigrate?" Snake asked nonchalantly. Gu Mingming felt even more aggrieved when she mentioned this and said indignantly, "I also want to know why I transmigrated. Moreover, your mother at least brought along 300 poems of the Tang dynasty and a ballpoint pen when she transmigrated. I only wore a damn bikini. If a messenger of the beast deity really descends after 1,000 years, she will definitely think that I am more of a joke than your mother." "Bikini?" Snake raised his eyes and asked, emphasizing the main point. Gu Mingming nodded perfunctorily and said, "Yeah, it's the clothes I wear when I swim. I originally wanted to confess to my heartthrob senior. TSK, this is even more troublesome. I said it the last time, and Elvis and Leah are still trying to find out about Senior from time to time. I feel like I had an affair, but I clearly didn't do anything. Yet I can't explain it clearly, sobs, sobs, sobs. I feel bitter in my heart, but I won't say it. Snake laughed and said, "But you have already said it." Gu Mingming rolled her eyes at Snake and did not continue the conversation. She changed the topic and continued discussing your mother. Do you know your mother is too talented? Using a book of 300 poems of the Tang dynasty to deceive the Sauter tribe for over 1,000 years, that Cole. When he was verifying my identity previously, the secret code was hoeing rice at noon. Tisk, shouldn't you be a little more formal when you want to verify the password? Something like the Heavenly King covers the Earth Tiger, or the pagoda suppresses the river demon or something. At the very least, it should be open sesame, right? How could it be hoeing in the middle of the day? I think you're definitely not close to your mother. What do you mean by aloof or dignified? It must be a misunderstanding. Snake nodded and said, I have never met her before. Gu Mingming pursed her lips and looked at Snake apologetically. I'm sorry, it was a slip of the tongue. I didn't mean to make you sad. Snake tilted his head and looked at Gu Mingming's bright eyes, asking, I'm sad? Why? Gu Mingming blinked her eyes, not knowing how to answer the question. She thought to herself, your mother has been dead for 1,000 years. Isn't it too late for me to say I'm sorry for her? Chapter 547. Oh! Gu Mingming rubbed her face and adjusted her expression before looking at Snake and asking, since you have your father's memories, can you analyze it with me? Why did your mother make others offer 300 poems of the Tang dynasty as some esoteric manual? Snake could not help but laugh as he looked at Gu Mingming. To protect you. Me. Gu Mingming pointed at her own nose and asked in confusion. Snake nodded his head and continued. The so-called messengers of the beast deity are mostly smart but not powerful enough. If you do not have an insurance mechanism to prove your identity, there is a high possibility that you will lose your life before becoming a messenger of the beast deity. My mother beast left behind that book and a foolishly loyal tribe to be your protective talisman. It's a pity that the current tribe leader is not a loyal one. Gu Mingming nodded her head in agreement and said, but your mother is already very nature-defying. Sauter can survive for thousands of years with the name of the messengers of the beast deity, and no one dares to offend them. This shows how awesome your mother is. Snake rubbed Gu Mingming's little head and said, didn't you say she was a joker just now? Gu Mingming laughed awkwardly and said, you can't blame me for this. Do you know what the prayers and dance for blessings that your mother has passed down are? What the F*** King Divine Song Little Apple. And it's even in English. Let me tell you, if it wasn't for the bunch of girls in my hostel who let loose, I would never know this song even if I died. Snake raised his eyebrows and said, oh, let me hear it. Gu Mingming had the urge to bite her tongue and commit suicide. She shook her head and said, no, that divine song of the square does not suit my cold temperament. Snake raised his head and said, if you don't sing, I will eat you up. Gu Mingming frowned and said, TSK, can you be more creative? Using the same trick to threaten people will lose its effectiveness. Snake narrowed his eyes and slowly opened his mouth, revealing his poisonous fangs dripping with venom. He slowly approached Gu Mingming. Gu Mingming was terrified and said, Mighty King, calm down. I will sing all right. Snake regained his cool in a second and looked at Gu Mingming with a please start your performance expression. Gu Mingming tugged at her wrist and said, Great King, can you loosen your grip first? Snake shook his head and said, just sing like this. All right. Gu Mingming cleared her throat and sang the Chinese version of Little Apple, interspersing the English lyrics in between. Actually, she was a little embarrassed to sing this song, especially when she felt like dancing along as she sang, as if she was possessed. Gu Mingming's eyes lit up. That night, Snakel gave Gu Mingming special permission to sleep late. He watched her dance Little Apple for half the night with a smile in his eyes, until she was so tired that she laid on the ground and refused to get up. Only then did he wrap her up in a beast's skin, before stretching his arms out to sleep at a distance of 2 arms away from her. His body was too cold, even his blood was cold. He wanted to get closer to her, but he knew that no matter how warm she was, she could not warm up his ice-cold soul that had been frozen for 1,000 years. Instead of causing her to fall sick again, why not let her maintain her own warmth, while he just watched from afar? Anyway, he was already used to the cold. The next morning, Gu Mingming was woken up by a loud clamor. "Snake, get out here right now. I want to challenge you." Chapter 548. Snake tugged at Gu Mingming's hand that was rubbing her eyes and leaned forward. He stuck out his tongue and licked it lightly. Gu Mingming shuddered and instantly lost all her sleepiness. She moved back and said, Don't. You make me feel like you are a pervert." Snake was not angry and just said, "In my memory, the father beast would treat the mother beast like this every morning, and the mother beast would reveal a rare smile." Gu Mingming was stunned and asked, "Did your father do this before or after your mother woke up?" Snake shook his head, indicating that he could not remember clearly. Gu Mingming explained patiently, "If he kisses your mother's eyes before she wakes up, that is a gentle wake-up call. But if he licks her eyes after she wakes up, that is a pervert, understand?" Snake frowned and looked at Gu Mingming in confusion. Gu Mingming cupped Snake's face and said, "Close your eyes." Snake did as he was told and closed his eyes. Gu Mingming's lips landed lightly on Snake's eyes. Like a dragonfly skimming the surface of the water, she left swiftly. Then she said gently, "Darling, wake up." Snake's heart skipped a beat. He opened his eyes and saw Gu Mingming's gentle smiling face right in front of him. He felt a little dazed. She clearly could not have known the scene at that time. But Snake had a feeling that Gu Mingming's version was the correct way his parents interacted. He could not say a word, and could only stare at Gu Mingming in a daze. Gu Mingming chuckled and backed away. She said, "Hey, this is the correct way to wake up a husband and wife. Eating eye wax or something. That is too unconventional." Snake nodded and did not say a word. He only felt his throat tightening, and something in his chest could not be controlled. Irritated, this feeling was irritated, right? He really wanted to grind something to vent the energy that was rampaging around in his body. What should he grind? Gu Mingming was not a good choice. She was too weak, and could not be pieced back together if he did not control it well. "Snake, don't think that I don't know you are inside. If you don't come out, I will go in." The clamor at the door continued. Snake's eyes widened, and his lips curled into an evil smile. "Oh, just grind him to pieces." Gu Mingming's hand was still held in Snake's palm, so she could only passively follow him as he walked out. The moment she exited the cave, the sunlight was a little blinding. Gu Mingming squinted her eyes and reached out to block the sunlight. Snake noticed her discomfort and quickly carried her up, using his chest to provide her with some shade. He supported her little but with one hand, and caressed the back of her head with the other, hugging Gu Mingming like a child. He looked at the other snake beast standing at the entrance of the cave, with the attitude of a father bringing his daughter to the amusement park, and being robbed by bullies. He frowned and said impatiently, "You're so noisy." "Wait." The snake beast widened its eyes and pointed at Gu Mingming in Snake's arms as if he had seen a ghost. "Who is she? Tell me, what's going on between the two of you?" Chapter 549. While Gu Mingming was sizing up the snake beast was also sizing her up. It was just that she could not see anything else from that horrified expression. But why did Gu Mingming feel that this situation was a little familiar? She remembered. When she had just arrived at St. Nazaire, Nina seemed to be looking for trouble with her in the same manner. But this snake beast in front of her was obviously a male? Was it right to act like the first wife beating up the third wife? Gu Mingming looked at the snake beast with a confused expression, then at Snake. She hesitated and hesitated, but still opened her mouth to ask, "That are you two good gay friends?" The snake beast did not know what good gay friends were, but Snake knew. His face instantly darkened as he gritted his teeth and said, "No, The snake beast took a step forward and roared in an unconvinced manner. I am Wabi, the one who will defeat Snake and become the new Snake King. We are enemies, not friends. Gu Mingming felt the thick aura of a Chinibu and laughed dryly. Sir, how old are you? Wabi raised his upper body and looked at Gu Mingming with an insufferably arrogant look. What do you mean? Gu Mingming was just about to explain when Snake placed Gu Mingming on a rock at the side. The rock was warm from the sun, and it was quite comfortable. The colorful snakes immediately surrounded her and marked out a safe zone. Just like the circle that Sun Wukong drew for Tripiaka every time he went to pray. But the area was bigger. But with Gu Mingming's fear of snakes, she did not dare to move even if the area was bigger. Who knew which snake would suddenly think that she was going to escape and bite her? Don't move, wait for me very soon. Snake placed Gu Mingming's hand by his lips and mimicked her kissing his eyes, kissing the back of her hand. Darling. Gu Mingming wanted to explain that what she did just now was just recreating the scene and putting herself in his shoes to tell him that kissing his eyes was the correct way to say good morning. Darling was not a casual way to say. Did he think he was Taobao's customer service? You call everyone dear? Snake did not give Gu Mingming a chance to explain. He turned around and transformed into a giant snake. His posture was similar to Wabi, with a human body and a snake tail. However, when the two of them stood side by side, it was obvious that they were taller. Snake's entire body was green, and the color was much darker than usual. The oppressive feeling was also stronger. Even Gu Mingming, who could not feel the beast's pressure, felt suffocated. She stopped breathing, and did not even dare to breathe loudly. She was extremely nervous. On the other hand, Wabi shook his tail, looking eager to try. His smile was a little creepy. No matter how one looked at him, he looked like a pervert. Snake did not want to be entangled with Wabi and swung his snake tail directly at his abdomen. The scales on his tail were in an exploding state, and if he were to be swept by this attack, he would probably end up with his flesh torn apart. Although Wabi's body was big, he was not clumsy. On the contrary, he was especially agile. When he saw Snake swinging his tail at him, he crouched down and stuck close to the ground to avoid Snake's attack. At the same time, he charged towards Snake like an arrow leaving the bow, as if intending to engage in close combat. Snake laughed coldly and stood still on the spot, allowing Wabi to attack him. When Wabi's poisonous fangs almost touched his abdomen, Snake suddenly transformed into a snake, opened his mouth wide, and bit down on Wabi's weak spot. He raised his body and flung Wabi into a thick noodle, a noodle without a soul. Aside from the topic, tomorrow is Valentine's Day. I hope every baby has someone to accompany them. I hope you will have someone to care for you when you are sad, someone to rely on when you are tired, and someone to share your happiness with. Chapter 550. Snake had no intention of letting Wabi off. His thick snake body coiled around Wabi tightly, strangling him inch by inch. The two of them, whom Gu Mingming had mistaken as a gay couple just a moment ago, twisted into a matcha *T fried dough twist. The scene was too gory and Gu Mingming did not dare to watch. She hugged her knees and buried her face in them. Snakes were indeed too scary. Not long after, a pair of cold hands lightly tapped Gu Mingming's arm, and a cold voice rang above her head. Tu Meng. Gu Mingming looked up, and the first thing she saw was a hand with its palm facing upwards, followed by Snake's devilish face. Gu Mingming hesitated for a moment, and raised her tiny fist in midair, not daring to place it in Snake's hand. Snake raised his brows and said unhappily, Gu Mingming pouted and said, Did you wash your hands after grabbing *T just now? Snake was taken aback. He turned back to look at the bloody Wabi, and suddenly searched his memory for a scene related to *T. Other animals' *T seemed different from Snake's. Snake felt as if he had suffered an internal injury. He felt that he might never be willing to accept Wabi's challenge again. Slowly retracting his hand, Snake sighed and said, Let's go. Gu Mingming did not move. She hugged her knees and sat on the spot. She looked at Snake and asked, Where to? Snake looked at his own hand silently and said, "To wash my hands." Gu Mingming laughed unkindly, but still stood up and followed behind Snake. When she passed by Wabi, who was lying on the ground, Gu Mingming asked, "What about him?" Snake stopped and turned back to ask, "Do you want to eat sh*t? Do you want to eat snakes?" Gu Mingming was so scared that her face turned pale. She ran to Snake's side and said, "No, no, no, I'm not interested at all. Let's go and wash our hands." Snake frowned as he looked at Gu Mingming avoiding snakes. He said quietly, "Actually, snake meat is quite delicious." Gu Mingming was stunned. She turned to look at Snake with a stiff neck and said, "Why do males like to persuade others to eat themselves?" Snake looked back at Gu Mingming and said, "Eat myself." Gu Mingming did not say anything. She just looked at Snake quietly, as if waiting for an answer. Snake shook his head and said, "There's nothing else in the Snake King Valley, but there are plenty of snakes. It won't be too late to eat me after you finish eating them." Gu Mingming's gaze landed on Wabi, who was standing behind Snake. She twitched her mouth and shook her head, turning to run. "No, no, I can't bring myself to do it." Snake also turned back to look at Wabi and nodded. "Yeah, it is a little disgusting." The two of them chatted as they walked to the lakeside. Gu Mingming squatted down and scooped up a handful of water to wash her face. Then, she retreated to a spot further away from the shore. Snake, on the other hand, was relaxed. He swam his entire body into the lake, his snake tail swaying gently in the water. His upper body that was above the water maintained his human form. He asked, "You're afraid of water?" Gu Mingming shook her head. "I am a little white dragon in the waves. Only Sun Yang can swim faster than me." Snake did not know Sun Yang, and was not interested. He only asked, "Then why didn't you enter the water?" Gu Mingming picked up a stone and threw it into the water. She smiled faintly and answered, "Someone's heart would beat erratically the moment he saw me near the lake. He was so nervous that he would be abandoned, so I promised him not to go near the lake." Aside from the topic, Happy Valentine's Day. Chapter 551. Snake swam to Gu Mingming's side and laid his upper body on the shore. He looked at her and asked, "Why?" Gu Mingming did not want to tell him about how she tried to jump into the lake to transmigrate back to the modern world after she was heartbroken, but was mistaken as a suicide attempt. She just avoided the topic and said, "I transmigrated from the lake, so he was afraid that I would be pulled back once I got close to the lake." Snake sneered and reached out his long arm to grab Gu Mingming's ankle. Gu Mingming swayed a few times in a panic, and finally fell into Snake's slightly cold arms. With a plop, Snake carried Gu Mingming and fell back into the lake. Gu Mingming's swimming ability was not bad, and she managed to maintain her balance after a few flops. She glared at Snake and asked, "What are you doing?" Snake used his snake tail to lift Gu Mingming up gently. His ice-cold fingers brushed past Gu Mingming's face and tidied her wet hair. He said, "Tell that certain someone to stop worrying. Even if you drown yourself in the lake, you won't be able to transmigrate back." Gu Mingming was stunned for a moment. She suddenly grabbed onto Snake's shoulders excitedly and asked, "You know how to transmigrate back?" Snake's expression darkened. His jade-green eyes reflected the ripples in the water. He opened his thin lips and said slowly, "Yeah, I know. Should I tell you?" Gu Mingming was suddenly stunned. "Wanna know? Want to?" She had panicked when she first came to the beast world. She was frightened by these monsters, who could turn from beasts into humans and run around naked. She had also complained about the lack of resources and entertainment. But other than the time she escaped after she was heartbroken, she had never thought of going back. Compared to the modern world, this place was more like her home. All the people she loved, the people who loved her, were here. Did she want to go back? What should she do after returning? Continue my unfinished university studies and struggle with one part-time job after another for the rest of my life? She had to admit that life in the beast world was too comfortable for her. Elvis and Leah gave her the best care. She had not lived such a peaceful and happy life since she was 7 years old. Gu Mingming slowly took a few steps back and looked at Snake with a confused gaze. But she still shook her head in the end. I don't want to know. I don't want to go back. I promised them that I wouldn't leave them behind. Snake seemed to be rather surprised. He stared at Gu Mengmeng with a rather stiff expression. Only when Gu Mengmeng had already swam ashore did he chase after her from behind. He did not transform back to his human form, but caught up with Gu Mengmeng in his half-orc form. He carried her in his arms and swam back to the cave. When they came back, a fire was already lit in the cave. There was a pot on the fire with stewed meat in it. He didn't need to taste it to know that it was Li's doing just by smelling it. Gu Mengmeng sat in front of the fire, hugging her knees. Her mind was in a daze, and she could not tell what she was thinking. Snake's face would always linger in her mind. Yes, I know. Should I tell you? He had clearly rejected her, but he couldn't help but think about it. Gu Mengmeng sneaked a glance at Snake, and Snake's gaze coincidentally landed on Gu Mengmeng's face. He used his hand to gently rub Gu Mengmeng's face and said, "Didn't you like the food he cooked? Why don't you eat?" You're tuning in to the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.